The Varnak Empire had ruled over 10 galaxies for centuries. They were a proud race, known for their immense power, their advanced technology, and their belief that they were the chosen ones of the universe. They had conquered worlds, controlled vast resources, and built an empire that no one dared challenge. But like many empires, their pride blinded them to the dangers of the unknown. In the heart of the galaxy lay a forbidden zone, a place marked by strange signals and rumors of ancient, powerful forces. For thousands of years, no one had dared enter. It was said to be cursed, and the Varnak had always dismissed the warnings. After all, they were the strongest species in the galaxy, so what could possibly threaten them? One day, however, the High Council of the Varnak made a decision that would change everything. They ordered the construction of a mining station on a dead planet located in the center of the Forbidden Zone. This planet was marked by an ancient symbol that had glowed faintly on its surface for as long as anyone could remember. The symbol had been a mystery, but the Varnak scientists believed it was merely a relic of an old civilization. Nothing to fear. They were confident that nothing could harm them, so they ignored the warnings of their ancestors. As soon as the Varnak began drilling into the planet's surface, things started to go wrong. At first, the signs were small: ships reporting strange disturbances in hyperspace, random systems failures, and strange noises on communication channels. But then, the sun that powered the Varnak Empire began to change. It turned a deep, unnatural shade of blue. The temperature of the Varnak homeworld dropped rapidly. Power grids started to fail. Ships disappeared without a trace in the middle of their travels. The people of the Empire were in a panic, unsure of what was happening. The situation grew worse by the day. The Varnak tried to maintain control, sending out emergency crews to repair the damage, but nothing worked. It was as if the universe itself had turned against them. Then, on the very day they drilled into the planet's core, the unthinkable happened. The symbol on the surface of the planet flared to life, brighter than a star, blinding anyone who was nearby. The mining station, along with everyone aboard, was consumed in a massive flash of light. Nothing remained but the emptiness of space. The Varnak were in shock. They had unleashed something far beyond their understanding. It wasn't long before the whispers began. Across the Empire, strange voices echoed through the static of communications. People reported hearing deep, ominous sounds, cries of anger, as if something ancient and powerful was waking up. Those who had been near the mining site began to speak of visions, of a great looming presence, watching them from beyond the stars. And in every corner of the Varnak Empire, one word echoed louder than any other: the Space God. The Varnak were no longer the mighty rulers they once thought they were. They had awakened something older and far more powerful than themselves, something that could wipe them out in an instant. The Space God, they realized, was real, and it was angry. The Varnak High Council, in their desperation, tried to find a way to undo their mistake. They consulted their most ancient texts and called upon their greatest scholars, but none had answers. They had offended a god, and they knew there was only one way to stop its wrath. They needed help. But from whom? It was then that a desperate thought crossed their minds: the humans. The Varnak had always looked down on humanity, seeing them as chaotic and disorganized, but they were also the only race known to survive the most extreme conditions. The kind of conditions that would destroy any other species. If anyone had a chance of talking to this space god, it was them. The Varnak sent out an urgent message to Earth, begging for help. They had no choice now but to place their hope in a species they had once dismissed. And so, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for an answer from the humans. Would they come? Could they save the Varnak from the wrath of the space god? Across the stars, panic spread like wildfire. The once proud Varnak Empire was falling into fear and confusion. Their systems were failing, their people were scared, and their leaders were helpless. The strange voice that echoed through their technology was now heard almost daily, a deep whisper that made even the bravest warriors tremble. Scientists had no explanation. Priests offered no comfort. The Varnak had ruled the stars with pride, but now they were learning what it meant to be powerless. They had offended something ancient, something far beyond their control. And now, they were desperate. The High Council met in secret chambers lit by emergency lights. All the leaders were present, but their faces were pale and quiet. Gone were the loud debates and proud speeches. Only fear remained. They had sent drones and warships into the Forbidden Zone, but nothing came back. The Forbidden Planet now glowed with that strange symbol, and even their sensors refused to look at it. Every machine they sent either vanished or returned broken and silent. One priest, old, half-blind, and ignored for years, finally stood up and spoke. He reminded them of a line from the oldest Varnak scroll, one that most had forgotten or believed was just legend. He said, "If the god wakes, only a soul unchained by pride, a being born of struggle and hope, may calm its rage." At first, no one knew what it meant. But then someone whispered the word, human. The room went quiet. Humans were not respected in Varnak culture. They were seen as young, reckless, and undisciplined. But they were also survivors. They had faced deadly planets, black hole storms, wild diseases, and even time anomalies, and lived. Unlike the Varnak, who avoided danger, humans ran toward it. And somehow, they always found a way to adapt. They did things no one else dared to do. Most importantly, humans were known for their strange ability to connect with what others feared. Where the Varnak would hide, humans would try to speak. The High Council didn't like the idea. Their pride hurt at the thought of asking humans for help. But they had no other option. Their empire was falling apart, and the space god was growing. Stronger with each passing hour, a message was quickly prepared and sent to Earth. The Varnak lowered themselves and spoke humbly. "Please," they said, "we need help. We believe your kind may be the only hope left." Across the stars, their plea traveled through light and void, past collapsed systems and broken satellites, until it reached the blue planet known as Earth. Back on Varnak, they waited. Days passed. Systems flickered. The space god's voice grew louder. Some began to lose hope. Others prepared for death. But just as the despair reached its peak, a signal returned. Earth had answered. It was short, clear, and human in tone. "We received your message. We are sending someone." The Varnak stared at the screen in disbelief. The proud empire that once thought it needed no one now placed all its hope in a single human. There were no speeches, no cheers, just silence, and a quiet prayer that this strange, wild species might do the impossible. The legends had said only a being unchained by pride and full of hope could speak to the space god. And now, somewhere, out there, one human was on their way, flying into a storm of gods and shadows with only their courage and their voice. The Varnak could only watch the stars and wait. The ship that carried the human was small, old, and scratched with the marks of 100 past missions. But inside sat a man named Leo Grant, a quiet, thoughtful explorer from Earth. He wasn't a warrior, not a scientist or a priest. He was a listener, a thinker, a man who had spent years traveling strange worlds and speaking with strange beings. When Earth received the Varnak's call, most leaders wanted to send a team, with heavy weapons and protective suits. But Leo spoke up and said, "You don't shout at a god. You listen." At first, they laughed, but something in his calm voice made them stop. In the end, they agreed. So Leo went alone. No guards, no heavy armor, just him, his mind, and a simple translator device. As his ship entered the edge of the Forbidden Zone, even the stars seemed to fade. The colors of space twisted unnaturally, and strange vibrations filled the air. Machines failed around him, but Leo was calm. He didn't fight it. He just let the ship drift toward the glowing planet, the one the Varnak had drilled into. The symbol on the surface pulsed slowly now, like a heartbeat. Leo landed with care. The land was dry, cracked, and silent. No wind, no life. Just stillness. As he stepped out, he felt something heavy. Not in the air, but in his chest. A weight, like something watching him, yet he did not run. He walked toward the glowing symbol, which was carved deep into the ground like a wound in the planet itself. He stood before it and spoke softly, not as a conqueror, but as a guest. I know they hurt you, he said. But I'm not them. There was no reply, not at first. Then the ground trembled, the sky darkened, the symbol brightened, and from the very air around him, a voice came. It was massive, layered with thunder and time, but also sadness. They broke the seal. They did not listen. They do not remember, it said. Leo didn't argue. He just nodded and said, "You're right." The voice seemed surprised. "You do not defend your kind?" it asked. "I came to listen, not to defend," Leo said. "Some of us forget, but some of us still remember to respect what we don't understand." There was silence. Then images filled Leo's mind. Not words, but memories, from long before humans, before the Varnak, before stars were born. The space god had once been a guardian, a protector of balance, asked by ancient beings to watch over certain places in the universe. The planet was not just rock. It was a seal, holding back something worse, a force that could unmake galaxies. The mining had cracked that seal. Pain had woken the god. Rage followed. Leo fell to his knees, overwhelmed, but he whispered, "Then let us fix what we broke." The voice asked, "Why should I believe you?" Leo touched the ground gently. "Because I have nothing to gain. I am just one man, and I came not with weapons, but with truth." The ground glowed around him. The winds began to move. The pressure in the air eased. The voice softened, becoming less like thunder, more like a whisper through trees. "You speak with humility. You may try." And just like that, the first step toward peace had begun. Not with force, but with one human's courage to listen. Leo looked up at the stars above. He knew this was just the beginning, but the space god had not destroyed him. That meant there was still hope. The days that followed were tense. Leo Grant stayed on the forbidden planet, in the shadow of the ancient symbol, speaking daily to the space god. At first, the god's voice was filled with confusion and anger. It questioned Leo, demanding to know why he was there, why he alone had come when others, like the mighty Varnak, had failed. Leo never tried to explain the arrogance of the Varnak. He simply listened. He spoke of humanity, of Earth, a world that had been torn apart by war and chaos but had learned to heal. He told the god that not all beings in the universe acted with pride or destruction. Some of them, like humans, had the strength to admit their mistakes and fix them. But the space god wasn't easily convinced. Every time Leo spoke, the god would test him, challenging his words with visions of destruction, showing him the suffering caused by the Varnak's greed. Leo saw planets burned, stars collapsing, and creatures lost to the void. The god's anger was deep, and Leo understood the pain it felt. Yet he didn't back down. He wasn't here to fight or to defend anyone. He was here to offer a way to stop the rage. He told the god, "I don't have all the answers, but I can promise you this. Humans know that every action has consequences. We make mistakes, but we don't give up. We learn, and we rebuild." Slowly, the god began to listen. The atmosphere around Leo softened, no longer thick with pressure. The visions became less violent, replaced by memories of peace. Times when the god had been respected, when it had been a protector of the universe. And with each conversation, Leo started to understand more about the god's true nature. It wasn't evil, nor was it a simple force of destruction. The god was a guardian, a keeper of balance, and it had been awakened by the Varnak's actions. But it was not beyond redemption. The god was wounded, yes, but it was not beyond healing. Leo began to speak not just to calm the god, but to heal the old wounds, using the wisdom he had learned from his own experiences. He spoke of forgiveness, of recognizing one's faults, and of the power of empathy. The god's anger didn't fade immediately, but it began to cool, replaced by a sense of curiosity. It had never truly understood humans. For the first time, it asked Leo to tell more of Earth's story, of how humanity had learned to rebuild after conflict, how they had learned to respect life in ways that no one had expected. Leo didn't shy away from the dark parts of human history. He talked about wars, about mistakes, about suffering. But he also spoke of the hope that humans always found, of the desire to grow, to improve, and to connect with others. "We're not perfect," Leo said, "but we're always willing to try again. And if we fall, we pick ourselves back up. That's what makes us human." With every word, the god seemed to change. The atmosphere became lighter, and the strange energy that had filled the planet started to fade. The dark storm clouds above dissipated, and the glow of the symbol became less harsh, softer. Leo felt the god's immense presence change, no longer filled with rage, but now with something else, an understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of the human spirit. The space. God wasn't ready to forgive the Varnak yet, not completely, but it was willing to listen, and that, for Leo, was a victory. He knew there was still much work to be done, but the hardest part was over. The space god had been heard, and it had agreed to give humans a chance. Now, Leo's task was to help the god heal, to show it that the universe was not filled with enemies, but with beings capable of growth and change. It wasn't going to be easy, and the Varnak still had to answer for their actions. But for the first time, there was hope. Hope that the god might find peace. Hope that the universe might find balance again. After days of conversation, the space god's anger had almost vanished. Leo Grant's persistence, his calm and humble approach, had reached the god in ways no one else had. The storms that once raged around the forbidden planet began to subside, and the once still air now moved gently. The symbol that had glowed with a fierce light now pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat, almost in tune with Leo's own. The god, once full of fury, had become more thoughtful, more reflective. Still, the universe was waiting. Leo knew that while the space god had softened, it was not yet healed, and the Varnak were still at risk. The god had agreed not to destroy the Varnak, but it still held them accountable for the damage they had caused. Yet the Varnak, desperate and afraid, could not understand the change. They were waiting for a miracle, but they didn't realize the miracle had already begun. Leo, understanding this, spoke with the god once more. "You're more than just a protector of the balance," he said softly. "You are also a teacher. The Varnak need to learn that their actions have consequences, and so do we. I can't undo what they've done, but I can help them understand." The space god was silent for a moment, as though considering this idea. It had seen the universe as a place of force and power, a place where might often overcame right. But Leo had shown it that there was another way, that wisdom, empathy, and growth could bring peace. The god agreed, but with a condition. "The Varnak will be given a chance," it said, "but they must prove their willingness to change. They must take responsibility for their actions. Only then will the balance truly be restored." Leo nodded, understanding. The Varnak were not to be forgiven blindly. They needed to earn their place in this new peace. When Leo returned to the Varnak homeworld, he brought with him not just a message, but a challenge. The Varnak leaders, still reeling from the god's wrath, stood before him. "The space god has given you a chance," Leo said, his voice calm but firm. "You have destroyed much, and you cannot undo that. But you can make things right. You must listen. You must change." The Varnak leaders, still proud but humbled, were not quick to accept this. But Leo's words, coupled with the peace that had begun to settle in the galaxy, worked on them. Slowly, they agreed. They sent emissaries to the god, promising to mend the damage they had caused, to honor the balance that had been disrupted. And over time, the god's anger faded completely. The Varnak, once blind to their own pride, began to rebuild, not just their empire, but their understanding of the universe. They learned the importance of humility, of respect for things beyond their control. They had been given a second chance, not because of their power or might, but because one human had shown them a different way. The galaxy, too, began to change. The Varnak stopped their endless expansion, and instead, they sought to understand the planets they encountered. They listened, just as Leo had. And for the first time, peace spread through their empire, not because of fear, but because of cooperation and growth. As for Leo, he returned to Earth, knowing that he had done something no one else could have. He had faced the impossible. He had calmed the rage of a god. And in doing so, he had reminded the galaxy of something important. That even in the face of destruction, Hope could still find a way to grow. The humans had not fought the god. They had not tried to control it. Instead, they had listened, and through their understanding, the universe had found its balance once more. The space god, once feared as a force of wrath, was now seen as a guardian once again, a reminder of the power of humility and the strength of a single human's will to listen.